Every time a big storm rolls through and the lights go out, the same question starts trending. Why don't they just bury the power lines? And it seems completely obvious. Underground, a falling tree can't take them out. Wind can't tear them down. Ice can't drag them off the poles. So why, after 100 years of storms doing exactly that, are most of the power lines in America still hanging in the air, right where the weather can reach them? The answer isn't inertia, and it isn't that nobody thought of it. It's a set of trade-offs so steep that utilities bury lines only where the math actually works out, and almost everywhere else, leaving them up on poles is the deliberate, defensible choice. To see why, you have to look at what burying a line actually costs you. And it starts with a number almost everyone underestimates. Stringing a normal distribution line overhead, the kind running down your street, costs somewhere in the range of $100,000 to a few $100,000 a mile. Take that exact same line and bury it, and the cost jumps to somewhere between $1 and $5 million a mile. 5 to 10 times more. Sometimes worse than that. Why so much? Overhead, you set poles and hang wire in open air. Underground, you have to trench the whole way, through soil, rock, and tree roots, around the gas and water and sewer and fiber that's already buried under the street. Then you lay conduit, pull specially insulated cable, and backfill. Down every street, past every driveway. In a dense city, you're cutting and repaving pavement the entire length of the run. And this isn't a one-block job. When North Carolina's utility regulator studied burying the state's entire distribution system, the answer came back: about 25 years of work and a 125% increase in electricity rates. More than doubling everyone's bill. A separate study in Massachusetts put the statewide cost as a net loss of over $260 billion, with some customers' monthly bills doubling or tripling. That is the real reason just bury it all never happens. Not that nobody thought of it, but that somebody costed it. And yet cost alone isn't the whole story, because burying a line changes something more surprising. What happens when it breaks? Here's the part that flips people's intuition. Overhead lines fail more often, but they fail in a way that's cheap and fast to fix. A tree drops a line, a crew drives out, and they can see exactly where the break is. They rest-string the wire, and the lights come back in hours. The damage is right there in the open, where anyone can find it. Now bury that same line. It almost never gets knocked down by weather anymore. That's the whole win, and it's a real one. But underground cables do still fail. From age, from moisture working into the insulation, from a backhoe on a construction site, from the ground itself shifting. And when a buried cable fails, you can't see any of it. The fault is somewhere inside a cable sealed in conduit under a street. So crews have to hunt for it with specialized equipment, locate the exact spot, then dig down to reach it, cut out the damaged section, splice in new cable, and reseal the whole thing. What would have been a few-hour repair overhead can turn into days, sometimes longer. That's the trade. Burying a line swaps a frequent, fast, visible failure for a rare, slow, hidden, expensive one. For a hospital feeder or a dense downtown core, that trade is absolutely worth it. For a rural line running past a few dozen homes over many miles of open country, it usually isn't. And there's a second limit waiting underground that has nothing to do with money at all. Any wire carrying current heats up. Always. It's the wire's own electrical resistance turning a little of that power into heat, and the more current you push, the hotter it gets. Push too much, and the insulation starts to cook. An overhead conductor is hanging in open air, so this is barely a problem. The breeze just carries the heat away. That's why an overhead wire can run hot and push a lot of power. But take that same conductor, wrap it in thick insulation, and bury it in soil, and you've smothered it in a thermal blanket. The heat it makes now has almost nowhere to go. So a buried cable can carry noticeably less current than an identical wire strung overhead before it overheats. Read that again, because it's the counterintuitive heart of this. The ground that protects the cable from the storm is the same ground that traps its heat and limits how much power it can move. To get that capacity back, utilities have to use bigger, more expensive cable, or run several cables in parallel, or even engineer the soil around them to pull heat away faster. Every one of those fixes piles more cost on top of the cost we already talked about. And for short runs, you just pay it and move on. But stretch that buried line out over distance, and a completely different wall appears. An underground cable is, electrically, a very long capacitor. You've got the conductor running down the center, a grounded metal shield wrapped around the outside, and insulation in between. That is almost the textbook definition of a capacitor, and a capacitor does something specific on alternating current. The grid runs on AC, where the voltage flips back and forth 60 times a second, and a capacitor on AC draws current constantly, just to charge and discharge itself with every flip, whether or not anything at the far end is actually using power. In a buried cable, that's called charging current. And here's the problem. The longer the cable, the more of it there is. Stretch a high-voltage AC cable out far enough, past a few dozen miles, and it's drawing so much current just to charge its own insulation that there's little capacity left to carry real power to the other end. The cable starts choking on itself. Overhead lines have this same effect, but strung out in open air it's far weaker, which is why overhead AC lines can run hundreds of miles without trouble. This is exactly why the longest buried power links don't use AC at all. The cable that now carries a chunk of New York City's electricity all the way from Canada runs on direct current, DC, which sidesteps the charging problem completely because the voltage isn't flipping back and forth. The catch is that DC needs big, expensive converter stations at each end to talk to the AC grid. So underground doesn't just cost more. Past a certain distance, ordinary AC underground simply stops working, and you're forced into a pricier technology altogether. Now, none of this means burying is bad. It means burying only pays off where its advantages are actually worth the price, and there are plenty of places they are. New neighborhoods are increasingly built with the lines underground from day one, because trenching an empty subdivision before the streets are even paved is far cheaper than tearing up a built-up one later. Dense downtowns run underground because there's simply no room for a forest of poles, and the cost of an outage there is enormous. And in the highest wildfire risk corridors out west, utilities are now deliberately burying lines, because an overhead line arcing in dry wind can start a fire that costs far more than the cable ever would. What you almost never see is a utility burying a long rural run across open country. That's exactly where overhead is cheapest, where a storm does the least dollar damage per mile, and where the buried cable's slow repairs and heat limits bite the hardest. So it stays overhead. The grid you see hanging above your street isn't an accident of history, and it isn't neglect. It's the outcome of that same calculation, cost against benefit, run street by street, for 100 years. So the next time the wind takes your lights out and you find yourself wondering why the wires are still up on those poles, the honest answer is this: someone ran the numbers, and on your street, overhead one. Burying trades a fast, cheap, visible repair for a rare failure that's slow, hidden, and expensive, and even then, a buried line can only carry so much power before heat and physics push back. But that calculation isn't frozen in place. Cable keeps getting cheaper. Storms are getting stronger and wildfires more destructive, which pushes the cost of an overhead failure up every year. And the invisible line where burying finally wins is moving, quietly, street by street, season by season. Where exactly that line sits for your neighborhood comes down to a single number that almost nobody outside a utility ever sees: what they believe the next big storm is going to cost. And right now, that number is only going one direction.